Hi, welcome to our daily encounter. As we think about the human mind, it's amazing what the human brain is able to do with limited information. We are wired to be able to make conclusions based upon just a few uh, facts. We use this all the time. You might have played games where you're only given like certain pieces of the puzzle and you have to figure out what it is. Maybe it's a picture of a giraffe and you only have the corners filled in, and you try to fill it in. It's amazing how quickly we can fill in the gaps and recognize that it's a giraffe. We do this in our judicial system. Detectives, when they go out to investigate a crime, they have to get bits of information from the scene, from eyewitnesses, from friends, relatives, and co-workers of the person who allegedly did the crime. And they get all these little pieces of information and they draw conclusions from it. And they even take that to court, and a jury decides based upon those same bits of information. And so we do this all the time. We take small bits of information, we compile them together, and we reach a conclusion. And sometimes we have a lot of facts to go on, and sometimes we don't have very many. But our brains are just wired to reach conclusions in that way. And even though that's a wonderful and beautiful thing about the human brain, at the same time, it leads to misunderstandings. Sometimes we have just a little bit of information and our minds go wild with the few facts that we have, and before we know it, we've drawn conclusions that nowhere near match the reality of the situation. And so we find ourselves in life on either side of the table. Either we find ourselves being the one misunderstood, which is a very difficult place to be, to have people misunderstand what you said. But it also, sometimes we can be the one misunderstanding others. Someone might give us directions to their house. We just assume the house is on the right, but they told us it's on the left. Or we just assumed it was going to be further down than what it was, so we end up missing it. Misunderstandings cause a lot of problems in our lives. And that's what we find in our story here in the book of Joshua as well. In Joshua chapter 22. The Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh had built this altar. And they built it on the other side of the Jordan. If you remember, God had said that only on his altar were they to offer up sacrifices. And at this point, the altar was at Shiloh. And so the Israelites, who are on the opposite side of the Jordan, hear about what the tribe of Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh had done, and they get literally up in arms about it. And fortunately, they send out some people to inquire what's going on, only to find out that, hey, they weren't building the altar to offer up sacrifices, but just as a memorial, so that their children would remember that they were a part of the rest of the tribes. And so they had a good reason for doing it, but it almost caused a civil war at the very beginning of Israel's existence in the new land. And so it could have been a very, very, very dangerous situation. What this story does for us, though, is it gives us some really good practical application in what we can do to avoid misunderstandings. I don't think that we can ever 100% snuff out every misunderstanding that can ever happen between two humans. There's just too many elements involved and too many things that can go wrong for misunderstandings to occur, that cause misunderstandings to occur. But we can reduce them by learning some things from this story. First off, by looking at what they did wrong. First we'll look at what they did wrong, and then we'll look at what they did right and try to learn from both. First off, what went wrong here is that the Reubenites and the Gadites and the half-tribe of Manasseh didn't communicate to the rest of the tribes what they were doing. Had they sent someone out, to explain what they were going to do, say, hey, we're going to build this altar on our side, but we know it looks bad. We know it looks like we're going to offer up sacrifices, but we're not. It's just going to be a memorial. If they had done that at the beginning, all of this would have never taken place. But the lack of communication caused the misunderstanding. And of course, we look in our lives, how many times has there been misunderstandings purely on the fact that we didn't communicate what we were doing, or someone didn't communicate to us what they were doing? Communication is probably the biggest thing that we can do to cause misunderstandings not to occur. Based upon the fact that our human minds draw inferences and conclusions based on a certain amount of information. Well, the more information that we have, the less likely we'll be to misuse that information and to draw the wrong conclusions. And so if we don't want someone to misunderstand us, the best thing that we can do is to communicate to them in the best way we can, with the most details that we can, and just let them know the whole story, so that it alleviates them having to fill in the gaps and therefore making misunderstandings or having misunderstandings. And so that's one thing that went wrong. The second thing was that the sons of Israel on the west side of the Jordan listened to rumors. They listened to rumors. Twice it talks about that they heard, that these tribes had built this altar. Now they just heard it. They hadn't seen it for themselves. They just heard that that's what had happened. And what's interesting is what they heard was actually true. They were building an altar. It's not that this rumor was a lie. And that's what's interesting as we think about things that we encounter in life. A lot of times the rumors that we hear and the destructive gossip that goes on is a lot of times based on truth, and sometimes are based upon true statements, but it doesn't make them any less dangerous. For example, someone comes up to you and says, you know what, I saw so-and-so's car at a bar last night. And that's all they say, and then they walk away. Okay, well, that very well could be a true statement. Maybe that person's car was at that bar last night. But what they didn't do is give you the full story. Was he there, drinking and picking up women? Or was he just there picking up a relative or a friend who had been drinking to make sure that they weren't drinking and driving, to give them a safe passage home? Or maybe to help someone out? You just don't know the rest of the story, but when you hear so-and-so's car was seen at a bar, all of a sudden you might start filling in the gaps and conclude that this person was out partying and doing things that were wrong. And so, again, just because a statement is true, it doesn't necessarily mean that it conveys the truth completely to another person. And so what we have to do is, when we hear a rumor, is to try to get as much information as possible, particularly from the source. Had they received more information, had they gained more information about what they were doing, again, it would have saved them a lot of trouble, because they would have found out sooner that they were not trying to offer up sacrifices. So that's two things that can go wrong if you don't communicate effectively, and then if you start listening to rumors. But the good things that went on was the fact that before they started the Civil War, the tribes that were on the west of the Jordan did inquire. Granted, it was after they got up in arms and got all upset and flustered about it and ready to fight, but at least they didn't just go marching, with in arms and just totally just started fighting before even asking. They did inquire about it, which is the proper thing to do in this situation. They went across, they sent people to ask and inquire, and they got more information, and therefore found out the truth and the whole truth about the situation, and therefore the situation fizzled out. And that's what we should always do in our own lives. You know, I heard a rumor today at work. Yeah, it was today at work. I heard a rumor that one of the places where I was working, they all got loaned out, and that there was nobody there anymore. And that was partially true, but unfortunately for myself, I had already told 2 people before I actually went back and inquired exactly what had happened, which was my fault. Because when I actually asked one of the people in the shop what exactly had happened, it wasn't that everybody was loaned out, it was only just a few people. And so I had to go back and correct it. But that's what we ought to do. If you hear a rumor, you hear something, and you just say, well, you know what, let me find out for sure from that person. That's the best thing to do, because it will alleviate a lot of misunderstandings that way. So these are just some things to think about, some things that will help you in your life. It'll help you with your spouse, it'll help you with your children, with your co-workers. It can help you in all types of relationships to try to, again, minimize misunderstandings that we have with others. I thank you guys for watching the video. I hope it was helpful to you. I thank you guys. Can't wait for you guys to see you guys tomorrow. I'll get it right in a minute. Can't wait to see you guys tomorrow. Love you guys. God bless.